Hello, all, and welcome back to another episode of TV and Us, a conversation show about the TV series we just can't stop talking about. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
And each season we focus on a different show, reviewing it episode by episode, and we invite you to watch along with us. Right now, we are reviewing The Bear Season 2, and today we are on Episode 4, titled Honeydew. If you haven't watched it yet, this is your spoiler alert. Check out this episode before continuing to listen to the rest of our conversation. All right, Sarah, kick us off with an IMDb summary for Episode 4.
While in Denmark for an internship with Chef Luca, Marcus tries to challenge himself through the preparation of a series of new dishes that could benefit the restaurant.
All right. And let's start off with our episode titles for Episode 4. What was yours?
Mine is Operation.
Nice. Yeah, him going, this feels like playing Operation.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It looks like it too. So
it looks like it too. And you've got Luca next to you being like, nah, no. Meh.
Right. Worse. Try again, chef.
Yeah. My episode title is Jelly.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because what is that?
Right? Well, Marcus knows now. He's a pro at making it. So at least there's that.
All right. Let's dive into our thoughts about Episode 4 of The Bear Season 2. What are your thoughts about this episode? Very different type of The Bear episode.
Yeah, this is one of my favorites. This is one of those episodes that I was really excited for us to talk about. It's such a joy to just be in this episode and be hanging out with Marcus. You know, in the previous episodes, Marcus has usually been this like serene presence. And when we hang out with him, when he's making his donuts or his cakes or whatever, it's so peaceful and a nice little like respite from the craziness in the kitchen. And that's what this whole episode is just hanging out with Marcus as he's doing all of this stuff. And it's great to learn more about this character who is so endearing. And we just love him. But in this episode, we get to learn more of his backstory, more of his concerns, learn more about his mom and his family. And then also just see him on his own, figuring things out and you know, working on his craft. And so I think it's just such a fun little pit stop that we make in this episode. And yeah, it's one of my favorites. So I was so happy to get to watch it again.
This episode is so soothing. You know, I didn't want it to be over because I just wanted to keep spending time in this mood, this vibe, this energy. And in a lot of ways, like you mentioned, this episode's energy and tone are so aligned to the personality that Marcus is and kind of his presence in a room. I feel like this episode was able to capture so perfectly. It is stable, it is serene, it is grounded, and there's something sweet and comforting about it. So honestly, whenever I'm having a bad day, let me just fire up The Bear Season 2, Episode 4, and just stare at the trees and the shadows in Denmark, watch Marcus get up early, and kind of just the consistency and kind of the dedication and his hard work, I think, is also something that really shines in this episode. His patience with himself, I was surprised at seeing. Like, he messes up again and again and again, and Luca's like, try again, and yet he doesn't beat himself up and get frustrated. He's like, okay, let me continue to try. And there's something really incredible and admirable about that as well. I love that the show is willing to also give us the entire episode with him. You know, like, I think they could have spent a period of time, you know, checking in on Marcus and what he's up to in Copenhagen and then cutting back to everything that's happening in Chicago. But the show really dedicates the time to center around him. And that feels very intentional to me. I'm like, okay, what are we going to see in Marcus's storyline? There feels like just something significant there. But I was really thinking about how this episode, because it's so tonally different from the the rest of the episodes of the bear generally. It's such a nice contrast and really rounds out the kind of emotional journey and journey and vibes that we get with the bear. um, Beyonce's album just came out, and I've been listening to that album, and it is such a journey, and each song is so different in energy and rhythm and beat and all of that kind of stuff. And it is such a journey that you go on. And in a lot of ways, like, a season of television needs to accomplish something very similar to a musical album. We can't stay on a high the entire time, or the lows. There's got to be this variation and diversity in tone and energy. And I feel like the Bears really accomplishing that quite a bit with this season specifically. It's really leaning into that variation, which is really neat and really exciting.
And I love that it's so character based too. And I think that's what helps it feel natural and normal to have these tonal shifts, because we're following this character who, for the previous episodes, has been those moments of like peace and calm and steadiness. And so now this whole episode focused primarily on him is going to carry that vibe, because that's who he is as a person. So even the previous episode we spent mostly with Sydney, and you see it creative, it's diverse, you have this like dynamic, all of these different visuals and these different places that she's going to, and it's very active because that's more of who she is. And so I appreciate that these two episodes come back to back, because we're able to see not only more about who these characters are through what's happening on the screen, but just the way that each episode is constructed also helps us see further glimpses into their character as well. So just another example of how this show is just firing on all cylinders, and all of the components are working together to accomplish the goal.
Mm, that's such a great point you made around the way that this paired in conversation with the previous episode, episode 3, that focused really on Sydney, is a fascinating exploration of kind of the different creative processes that these two characters take with their approach. We got to see a little bit of a glimpse into Sydney's mind and the way she's taking in the world and exploring, like you mentioned, very actively, and digesting both mentally and physically digesting all of the things that she is consuming and taking in the world, and producing based on that. And Marcus, as we've seen in season 1 as well, kind of gets single-minded in his ambitions and really focused, zeroed in on a specific thing. And I feel like this episode in a lot of ways reflects that the world goes quiet when he is focused on his craft. And you can feel that in the way that this episode unfolds, and the way that he approaches his craft, which is there's almost like a quietness in the way that he works. We've seen him be in his own little world in the chaos of the kitchen in Chicago, but even in this kitchen as well, he's just quietly, methodically continuing to try and try and try again. So that difference in work processes and creative processes is really neat to compare and contrast between him and Sydney.
And I also love that we see that everything isn't perfect in Marcus's life too. Like, we learn a little bit more about his mom and his concern for his mom, and the way that, like, when he's planning to leave, he's telling the nurse like all of these things about his mom, and is really, really concerned, and that even permeates all of his conversations. And yet, even with that, he is still so steady and peaceful, and is willing to take these steps to further his career, even though he has these very real worries about leaving Chicago for this period of time because his mom is so sick. So I appreciate that the show balances all of those out, that he isn't this way because he's had it easy, but he is this way despite all of these difficult things. And this is just who he is, and he's able to maintain his steadiness in chaos because that's just who he is. And he's probably gone through a lot to develop that type of character. So it's just such a fun little peek into who he is, and how he became this way.
Yeah, no, that's so good. And we get to see him express a little bit more, especially in that conversation with Sydney as well, of some of the guilt that he carries coming here and feeling torn between his desire to stay by his mother's side, but then also he's got these ambitions and these opportunities that he wants to go pursue. And I love the way that Sydney holds space and creates a safe place for him to share and express that. But I also love that she perhaps has experienced something similar or can recognize that there's a guilt that he's carrying that she wants to speak life into, and she says, like, you deserve this just as much too. I understand that you have all of these like loyalties and desires and love for your family, but also like you have permission to look out for you too and to pursue your passions too. And I love the way that she is able to voice that to him for the thing that he might have like really needed to hear in that moment. So I just love seeing their friendship continue to blossom. And I'm curious, like insinuations of potentially more, perhaps from Marcus's side. Maybe he's catching feelings. I don't know. I was reading a little bit afterwards, and I was seeing some people interpret his reply to "I miss you too" as him feeling something a little bit more. Um, I I can see that. It's not where my mind initially went to, but I just kind of love just the human to human connection that they have, and maybe there's something more there. But the show maybe is dropping seeds about their relationship. What? How did you take in that scene?
Yeah, I read it as him catching feelings, and I don't like that. like,
Yeah,
I like
maybe
both
I'm
of
just in
these.
denial.
I like both of these characters so much, and I'm like, they're such great characters on their own. Sure, they would make a great romantic couple, but like, why do we got to do that? Okay, we
Mm-hmm.
got like a Carmi and Claire situation happening over here. Isn't that enough like romantic relationships for this show? Can't we just have the one and just be
Right,
okay with that?
right.
So I did read it as him catching feelings, but I hope that the show doesn't go there
Don't go
because
there.
I don't want that.
Mm. Well, I was watching a bunch of TikTok videos about the bear because we're on TikTok at TVNS Pod. Check us out. But there's all these TikTok theories too of Sid and Carmi, and I'm like, "Ugh, I know that we
Mhm.
love romance, but also can't people just have these really sweet human to human connections, sweet friendships, and not have it be more every time it's a male and a female that seem to just bond and make space for each other and really understand each other. Like we love the juiciness, I guess, of a potential romance, but I think there's something really sweet about them just truly appreciating each other and supporting each other and not having it need to be from a place of romance. But I get it. I get it. People
Yeah,
want the juice and the drama.
yeah, sure. But like the show is stressful enough. Why do we need to add more drama to this, especially within the
Right.
team too?
I
Like
know.
I like dating a coworker, nothing wrong with that, live your life, but that can also really disrupt a team if that goes
Yeah.
badly. Even if it's going well, it can still disrupt a team. And the team is already fragile enough. Like we don't need to
Mm-hmm.
add that in there. But if if the show is going to do a romance with Sydney, Marcus is the right answer for that. Like she is too
Yes.
smart to be with a person like Carmi. She knows better.
Right.
That would never work because she draws
They're also
boundaries,
too
you
similar.
know.
Yeah, they're also too
But
similar that that
yeah,
would be really volatile. There's
yeah,
a
yeah,
really
yeah, yeah,
healthy balance between her and Marcus.
yeah. So if
So
we
agreed.
if we have to do it, I don't think we have to do it. Marcus and Sid are the way to go, but hopefully not. They can just be friends, and that's beautiful and
Mm-hmm.
wonderful and great.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I agree, but the seeds are being planted. We shall see.
Yeah.
Uh, One thing I really love about that scene when they're on FaceTime is when Sid says, I miss you, and uh, Marcus says it back, and she immediately makes a joke after. And we've seen this
Mhm.
happen so many times in The Bear where the show recognizes that human nature, it's hard to deal with really pure emotions, and we've often seen it in the context of like difficult moments. But I kind of love that with this scene, even really pure good feelings that are really genuine can feel uncomfy. You're like, wow, this is really sweet, but like, let's move it on now. So I love that that is how that moment gets diffused, and that's how that conversation kind of wraps up and kind of goes back into this moment of levity. Just the recognition that even the sweet, tender, really pure, good moments of expressing how you both feel about each other is also kind of cringy too. And you both are like, okay, let's not make it weird now. Let's just, go back to our friendly banter. So I thought that that was such an accurate representation of human nature in the other aspect of really pure emotions. And we've seen the show handle the difficult ones and how those conversations get wrapped up really well. And I kind of love that there's a moment in the other side, the other version of this as well.
Well, and then he says something after like you play too much or something like that. And I love that they're both playful with each other, but usually at
Mm-hmm.
different times. Like we saw in a previous episode where like Sid and Tina are having a really serious conversation and then Marcus just like walks past and starts like
Yeah.
razzing her a little bit. And so like I love that contrast that they both will like mess with each other and be playful, but it's not always at the same time, which is also super true to life because you're not
Yeah.
always on the same page and you might be playful and the other person might be like, hey, I'm trying to focus. So it
Mm-hmm.
feels like such a normal part of relationships with somebody that you know really well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes, very much so. And I think it also makes those moments of really genuine expression between two people, two characters on the show, feel really exciting and thrilling because they are so fleeting and we don't dwell in the drama of it all. And, they don't have this really meaningful conversation about how much they mean to each other. Like, it's this fleeting little moment, which honestly makes it feel more exciting and more meaningful in a way because there's a moment of recognition that both of them have of like, no, we really do care a lot about each other, but we don't need to dwell on it. And I feel like a lot of shows and films really like soak in those moments, like, okay, we're gonna have this really meaningful conversation about our support for each other and care for each other. And it's like, I don't do that in real life. And there's something that's extra special about it being this little glimmer of something really genuine and pure. And then we're back to our shenanigans.
Yes, shenanigans, the best.
Yes, 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 yes. Okay, other big things that we wanted to touch on with this episode.
Yeah, something else that I really love about this episode is it also shows kind of Marcus's place within the team. Because even though
Mm.
he is in an entirely different country, he is still in contact with everybody.
Mm.
And multiple people call him or he's calling them. And so you just see in some ways he is kind of the
Mm.
relational
Yeah.
glue in this team. And I just thought that that was so smart. Like it makes sense for the character, but then also for the structure of this episode. Since he is kind of that glue, that's the way that we can still keep in contact with the people at the bear and
Mm.
see what's going on in their lives too, is because they're still interacting with Marcus. And so I thought, just from a character perspective and then like an episode structure perspective, that makes a lot of
Mm.
sense.
Yeah, it's able to accomplish many things with that one little device. Yeah, and I love the FaceTime call that he has with Thack and Richie because
Yeah.
uh, I, we all can probably relate to this, but there's something oddly comforting about the chaos and dysfunction of the people that you love and care about. That even though they're literally just fighting with each other on FaceTime, there's something that feels really comforting about feeling connected to that and still having that in your life in some way. And I also just love that we get that little moment with the two of them and uh, get to just check on the fact that like, yeah, things are the same back home. It's all good, and it's gonna be there waiting for me when I get back home.
Yeah, and it's a nice break in in the piece. This is kind of like the inverse of the normal episodes where it's like mostly stress and a little bit
Mm.
of peace, and then this is the opposite, mostly peace and then a little bit of stress. So it's such a fun way to insert those moments of silliness and chaos without it being too much. So you just kind of like dip your toe back into what's going on in the bear and then go, oh no, let's go back to Copenhagen. So I think it's just a fun way to make this feel cohesive in the season, instead of just being
Hmm.
this like one random episode where everything is peaceful and fine. But this is still very much part of this season and still fits tonally, even though it is a little bit different.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's so good. And I think it gives us the opportunity as the viewers to like miss our crazy crew too. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
oh,
Yeah.
I kind of miss Fack and Richie just yelling at each other in the background constantly, and the chaos of everything that happens at the bear. And I think it's like you mentioned, such a fascinating contrast because when he hangs up the FaceTime call, you feel the silence set in, and you kind of feel Marcus is like, man, I miss my crew, and being able to be back with them again soon. So that contrast is really really fun. The absence of the shenanigans, we kind of miss it.
Yeah. Yeah, you do. And those moments that we do spend with that crew, it just continues to highlight the impossibility of this task that they've undertaken. They're weeks away from open,
Mhm.
and they're nowhere near ready. And so I think the show is so strategic in showing us the fire suppression test and them failing that, because that's kind of a big deal, and kind of sets them back quite a lot. So
Mhm.
once again, setting up more stakes for the rest of the season.
Mhm. Yeah, and we get that title card at the beginning of the episode that's like 7 weeks till opening. And you're like, oh my, already 4 weeks has passed since I think the previous episode it was 11 weeks away. So that constant sense of forward propulsion, the show is really, really leaning into as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, time flies when you're trying to open a restaurant.
Yep. Yep. Um, all right, another like great little Marcus moment, little detail that I really loved is when he's learning from Luca. There's a I think they're talking about the Jalee or something, and Lucas essentially barks an instruction at him to go do something, and Marcus says, "May I ask why?" And I just love that. I just love that he's here to learn, but he's also just genuinely curious and going above and beyond just following instructions, being here, going through the motions. Like he's really being proactive about wanting to understand so that he can be better at his craft. So that little detail, that little question, I thought was just so indicative of how much Marcus really cares about this and is willing to put in the work and the effort to be better and to expand and grow his knowledge base. So those little like dialogue moments just say so much about who this character is.
Yeah, and builds on just who we've known him to be. Like he's said in previous episodes, like I forget which one it was, but it was earlier this season where he's talking to Sydney and he's like, "Hey, I went through all those cookbooks you gave me." And she's like, "Wait, you went through all of them?" So he's just like
Mm-hmm.
this voracious, reader, and just wants to gather all of this knowledge and learn as much as he can. And I think that's also part of the reason why Sid and Carmi could trust him enough to send him to a place like this, not just saying like,
Mm-hmm.
"Hey, go to this place down the street or whatever," but like, we're going to send you to an entirely different country to learn from this other chef because we trust you and we want to make this investment in you, because of who you are. So that one question that he asks is such a perfect encapsulation of who we've come to know him. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just so fun to see him like learning and experiencing something new, and I think not getting frustrated when he does it
Mm.
wrong too. So It's such a good episode. Ugh,
It really is.
yay, Marcus.
Look at him go. Yeah, I'm just surprised at how much the show gives plenty of time for
Yes.
him.
Yeah.
You know, just really surprised. I kept waiting to see in this episode that like we were going to cut back for the remaining. It'd be like we're at the halfway point. Okay, we're going to cut back to the bear. Or at the 3/4 point, and like no, we just really spend the whole time with him, and I just loved that choice. And the show, I think, has always been really great about developing who Marcus is as a character from season one, and I love the precious time uh, of the show's screen time that it's willing to dedicate to this character. It's really amazing. Feels like it's setting up for
Mhm.
something
Yeah.
once again.
Yeah. That he's not just like a side character, but he's actually
Yeah.
like really important to this team and really important to this show.
Yeah. Honestly, between like Sydney, Carmi, I think he's number three up there as far as like the show's focus and time and attention being spent on a character. We really get to understand who he is, what he's motivated by, how he's growing, all that goodness.
Mm-hmm. We love to see it.
All right. Any other big things in this episode we want to mention before we give out some awards?
I just want to shout out the music choices in this episode. They are so good and just totally fit the
Mm,
vibe. You get another Otis Redding banger in this, just which gives you all the warm and fuzzies. You got some really nice jazz going on. Like, oh my gosh, the music in this episode is just a dream. And then you pair all of that with these stunning visuals of Copenhagen and the food and all of that. Like, what a feast for your senses while watching this episode.
yes, yes. And I think there's some really fascinating like visual montages of the city of Copenhagen and perhaps a little bit of like POV because it's often intercut between when Marcus is just like walking around the city at different hours of the day. But there's just like the camera, it feels like it's like taking in the city, and the city is a feast for the camera to capture as well. Just people, the trees, the streets, all of it. It's just so like the shots are really beautifully framed in those montage sequences. So that was a feast for the eyes as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is one of those episodes where I just want to watch it over and over again. Like,
Yeah, it's so soothing.
it is, and it's so beautiful, and just like this show is so smart, and the cinematography pairs so well with just what the show is trying to
Mm,
accomplish in every episode. And I
yeah.
feel like this is a really good example of that, where you just have this really, it's just serene and peaceful, and the cinematography perfectly matches that, so you feel all warm and fuzzy while watching this episode.
It really feels like Marcus, his presence is being personified in an episode of The Bear. You know, like what would
Absolutely.
the Richie version of an episode of The Bear look like? What would the
Oof.
fact, like I think it'd just be
Yeah.
so fun to see the show continue to perhaps explore this idea of how do you
Hmm.
capture a person's presence through storyline, cinematography, music, all of that. It's kind of fun.
Hmm. We'll see
We
what the
shall.
bear has up its sleeve next.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I have one little shout out to the scene that happens in the opening with Sugar's accidental pregnancy announcement. And similar to the way that they rolled out the French Brigade system, I think it's just so fun seeing each of the characters react in the way that that character would. So Richie screams immediately, I freaking knew it. Fack is like, totally unfazed by it and goes, man, a wall fell, and I just like that little vignette, this little moment was so fun to see the way that all of the characters react to kind of a silly and ridiculous moment. Made for some good times.
And it's such a chaotic opening. Like, And then to cut from that to Marcus, I think is
It's
also
great.
really, really smart. Uh,
Yep.
and I think it's also interesting that conversation between Sugar and Carmi before
Yeah.
the chaos happens, and uh, once again seeing more about Sugar as she's processing this really big news that she has, and then even the way that she's trying to open up and tell Carmi about it is very like convoluted and a lot of words, and he's having to piece this together over context clues basically until the wall falls and she says that she's pregnant. So I think it's
Hmm.
again revealing of their relationship, and there's still maybe some level of like discomfort there almost, and
Yeah.
trying to like figure each other out, and how to continue to bond and grow closer. uh there's still some work to be done there, so I think that in addition to being a really funny scene, accomplishes some character stuff as well, which will be interesting to see as the season continues to progress.
Yeah, yeah. And you also see the way that like Carmi is not calm in that conversation either. You know what I mean? Like he's got the backdrop of just his general state of stress, then also this opening, and then also I think he's responding to the kind of sense of chaos that's happening within Sugar in front of him as well. And he's worried and he's concerned and he cares so much that it's fueling his like, oh my god, like what is happening, what is going on, and that type of response. So it's neat to see the way that he is sensitive and attuned to other people's emotions, and they kind of he absorbs a lot of them as well and kind of reflects it back to them in a way. But he is not calm in that situation either in that
Mhm.
conversation.
Yeah.
Yep.
Everyone is stressed. We are stressed. They are stressed. Just
Yes.
bundle of stress.
Everybody. Yes. All right. Well, let's give out some awards, shall we? The first category is Top Chef. Who is getting this award this week?
Yeah, I got to give it to European Marcus for just killing it in Copenhagen.
Yes, European Marcus is
Mhm.
thriving.
Yeah.
Absolutely thriving. Um, my choice for this award is going to Luca for being the Gandalf slash Obi-Wan slash Dumbledore character for Marcus. Just this fountain
Mhm.
of wisdom spewing out for Marcus to absorb. Like, who is this person?
Right? And I
Yeah.
I love that Luca is, he's not this like, he didn't go to school for this. He doesn't have this like prestigious schooling history or whatever, but he is just a dude who worked hard, and that's what Marcus is too. So I think that
Hmm.
pairing is really, really smart.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a couple years down the path and can really share quite a lot of wisdom. I loved a lot of what he shared. Honestly, I think it's important for anybody that's working on like something that they're passionate about or working in teams. There's so much goodness in how he reframes so many perspectives that are perhaps common today, but can contribute to these like toxic senses of identity, and his willingness to be like, I just wanted to run alongside the best, and I found myself improving my craft, but I really had to like take off that pride, take off the ego to really be open enough for it. Like there's just so much goodness in what he shares.
Hmm.
Okay, next category is achievement and chaos. What is getting this award this week?
I'm going to give this to the staff of the Bear for failing the fire suppression test.
Yes. Oh man, we're gonna do. Can't wait to see the next episode for how that's gonna unfold.
Right?
The fun thing is that as we near the opening date, we know that tensions are going to be higher, impatience is going to be higher, and it's just this wonderful little pressure cooker to see these characters just collide with each other in all of the most fascinating ways as all of their stress levels increase. So I think there'll be some really fun character moments coming up. I'm giving this Achievement and Chaos Award to Shitty Wi-Fi Connection.
Nice.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Always makes for a chaotic conversation when you're like, sorry, I think you froze. Wait, what did you say? Wait, can you hear me? Can you hear me? You and I are no stranger to that.
Yep.
Here as we long distance pod. All right, the next category is spiciest line. Who is getting this award and for what line that they deliver?
I'm going to give this to Fack, who has written "suck my butt" on the whiteboard in the office.
Oh my god. I didn't even notice that. That's so funny. That is so funny. I love that the whiteboard also says like, let's start from a place of like positivity or something like that.
Yes. Yeah. But now that's like partially erased on the board, which
yes.
I really like.
Shout out to the production and set designers for some great little nuggets. Someone had fun with those.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'm going to give this award to Sid. So in one of the interviews that she's doing for potential candidates, they ask, so when can I talk to the chef? And Sid goes, you are. And I just love it. Matter of fact.
Heck yeah, girl. You let them know you are a chef. Yeah. You are the chef.
Yeah.
And if they don't think so, they're wrong.
Yeah. Just for anyone that is like in a people group that is either often like just under the underdog in a lot of ways and has never been taken seriously in these like job settings or in life in general, I feel like that was a really satisfying scene for all of us. So good. Okay. Looking ahead, what are you pumped to see unfold in the next couple episodes as we make our way to nearly the halfway point? By the time we finish the next episode, we'll be right at the halfway point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this season is just flying by. Yeah, I'm excited to see, what challenges come up as they are racing toward open. And like you said, stress is only going to continue to rise. And so more pressure is going to be exerted on this team of people. And so I'm just very curious to see how all of these very different personalities will respond when they continue to be pressed in this pressure cooker of a season.
Yeah, I'm fascinated to see that as well. And especially as like more issues will inevitably come up, because it always does. And it always isn't like the last minute right beforehand. Something is going to go very wrong. And how will these characters that have grown so much either lean into that growth and lean into the things that they have learned, or as we do, kind of like default back to their natural impulse reactions? I think will be really, really fascinating to see. I'm intrigued to see when Claire will boomerang back into the picture. And I'm sure there's a whole bit that they're going to do, a whole storyline with Carmy and how he's going to grow or not grow through that whole relationship with Claire. Once again, I just feel like they're doing something with Marcus's storyline over the course of this episode. So this entire season, sorry. And I'm intrigued to see how that's going to unfold. So those are the two things that I am curious to see next. And then I would just love to circle back with Tina and Ibra, still invested in their journeys. And we didn't get much of them in this episode. So perhaps we'll boomerang and check up on our friends and what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, more Tina and Ibra, please.
Yes, I love them.
Yeah, they're wonderful.
So all right. Well, this was our review and discussion of episode 4. You can find it available on Hulu. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of TV and Us. Our name sums it up. We're big fans of TV and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us and our shared stories, so everyone is welcome here, and we're so glad you spent time with us today as we continued our journey through The Bear Season 2. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you tune to your favorite shows. Drop us a rating and review, letting us know your thoughts about episode 4. You can connect with us on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at tvnspod, or email us at tvnspod@gmail.com. We will be back very soon with episode 5, and we hope you have an amazing week. We'll talk again soon.